Welcome, everyone, to Evolving Together with Christine Labbé, beyond the diagnosis into a new realm of possibilities. Your child deserves to be seen, heard, valued, and celebrated exactly as they are. Hi, I'm Christine, founder of Evolve Movement, a pediatric neuromovement practitioner, conscious parenting coach, and author of Our Superpowers, celebrating differently abled kids and their siblings. I offer new insights, understanding, and expansion that empower you to support your child in a way that is aligned with their soul's potential. You are not limited to the stories you've been taught to believe. You can write your own narrative. It takes 28% of parents with a neurodiverse child to awaken and advocate for change to start seeing progress. Be the change you want to see and take the first step towards a new future. Evolving Together starts now. Welcome to Evolving Together, where we delve into the possibilities beyond your child's diagnosis. I'm your host, Christine Labbé, and today we have an extraordinary guest who has transformed the lives of countless individuals and families. Our guest is Anat Baniel, the founder of the Anat Baniel Method NeuroMovement and the acclaimed author of Kids Beyond Limits and Move into Life. Anat Baniel's groundbreaking work focuses on the profound transformation that occurs through her unique movement-based modality, a form of somatic education that integrates the body, mind, and psyche. Her method emphasizes slow, subtle movements with attention that awaken the brain to new possibilities and lead to a greater awareness and understanding of the self. From the start, Anat understood that transcending limitations, even those that seem hopeless, requires communicating with the brain and helping it find solutions to challenges. Her work is about creating the right conditions and environment for the student to become empowered to learn, heal, and transform. This holistic and ingenious approach aligns with how brain development naturally occurs, showing ways to access brain plasticity to achieve remarkable results. Anat's work has brought about significant changes in children and adults around the world, making the seemingly impossible possible. In our conversation, Anat shares how her method helps individuals come home to themselves, which enables them to open pathways to deeper healing and transformation. By expanding our ways of feeling, sensing, and moving, we can transform our perceptions and view of the world, leading to a profound awakening to new ways of living and being. This episode also highlights the importance of this work for professionals, empowering them to connect more deeply with the clients they serve, awakening within them the ability to recognize and resonate with others on a deep level, a key ability when it comes to parenting or being of service to children facing a neurodiversity disability or complex health challenges. In addition to the transformation it can have, it also serves as a powerful modality to empower and awaken parents to create an optimal learning and healing environment for their child to thrive in happiness and health, no matter their diagnosis. I experienced Anat's training myself several years ago, believing it would play an intrinsic role in my daughter's development, which it has. Through the training, I unlocked suppressed pain, experienced a sense of vitality and joy, and found a gateway to deeper self-awareness, healing, growth, and expansion. It awakened me to myself and allowed me to begin tapping into my own potential, which I felt was an important stepping stone to empower me to understand how to show up for my kids. So I'm excited to get started. Stay tuned as we begin this insightful and enlightening interview. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Evolving Together. I'm so excited to have Anat Baniel with us today. We're going to talk about the profound transformation that can occur in the Anat Baniel Method NeuroMovement training for parents So this is going to be the main topic of our conversation today. And I'd like to start, Anat, with maybe you could begin by talking about the importance of the parent going through this type of transformation to be able to create an optimal learning environment for their child to thrive.
I'd love to answer this question, but I think maybe we can talk about what the transformation is before we talk why it's important. So maybe you want to start on your end because you're a parent that took the training.
Yes. So, well, maybe you could walk us through the transformation that does occur in the training, because I do remember in those early stages, it felt like I was learning to feel again, which I feel is something that parents suppress, especially when we have children that are, neurodiverse or that receive a diagnosis. Often it's so painful that we suppress our feelings. And I think one of the things I noticed in those early stages of the training was learning to feel again and allowing my emotions to come to the surface. And I remember crying a lot and not really knowing why. Maybe we could start there, because that was kind of at the early stage and it was really a breakthrough for me.
Yeah. Well, Damasio, there's a well-known neurologist, Damasio, who wrote a very important book that is called The Feeling of What Happens. And my friend Gio Bolti-Taylor says we're feeling beings that think, and we're not thinking beings that feel. So the ability to sense and feel is at the heart of everything in terms of our ability to be in the world. So, for example, imagine if somebody loses for some reason the ability to feel, sense the palms of their hand. They even though the muscles can still work, the palm becomes not useful. And you don't have to go to such a great extreme. We put on a heavier glove to pick up a hot dish. It's great, but then with that glove on, we can't do anything more refined, right? So sensing and feeling is at the heart of everything. So, and as long as we move about and function, whether better or not so well, we sense enough to operate at the level that we're operating. That's basically bottom line. And one of the things, for example, because I'm writing an article about it right now, that happens to children on the autism spectrum, is that their ability to discern, to feel, sense finer differences is interfered with. So the people are trying to get them to learn or do things, but what needs to be worked on is to potentiate the brain to be able to notice and feel and sense things, that differentiate better. So so in the training, I structured the curriculum of the training based on my understanding of child development. And one of the fundamentals of child development, that they are little balls of sensations, when they're born, movement, and mostly random movement, reflex movement, and sensations. And that is very good. That is important. Without it, they wouldn't be able to do the magnificent growth that children do. So when you guys come into the first day of the training, I know that you're already formed and adults, but from my point of view in the process, you're newborns. So I start you with movements also from the motor point of view, which is, at the heart of the program, is with movements that are less differentiation, that are differentiated, that have less demand in terms of complexity. So we start at that level, but not by crawling you around the room or, that way, but really going into functional configurations that start from closer to the ground, simpler towards the gravitational force, and gradually take you, and it's not so gradual, it happens actually quite quickly, because you are there and you have a brain and you can move already and so on. So it doesn't take a long time to, through a process where the complexity grows. And not everybody cries, in the beginning or at any time. I had my moments in my training with fellow cries when I got, it became so connected to the emotional stuff. It was always connected to it, but like in a way that went like to, oh, wow, I didn't know I had that in me, right? But for me, it was never it wasn't like intense in a negative way. It was just there. So, and we can think about it like for a baby, when they cry, to us, it must sound tragic. For them, it's just there, unless they're in pain or fearful, or then it's different. So, and then each segment, there are 10 of them, focuses on certain fundamental core relationships that need to occur between the body and the brain, so to speak. But it builds on the end, it's not but, and it builds on what is already there. And when you finish your basic training, which is 10 segments, it's 100 and I think 10 or 11 days or something like that, total, which is a lot. Then you come for 4 or 5 segments of how to work with children with special needs. I restarted, but from a higher level. So actually, the children training requires much more complexity already and much more evolution for somebody. So I've had PTs, OTs, people want to come to the children mastery first. And because they think they're going to learn something outside of themselves. So I can't accept them. And some of them get mad, it's like, but I'm already trained. I said, you're trained in that. But our process is your own personal evolution, is the basis from which you'll have the knowledge what to do with another person. So that's description.
And this is exactly where I'd like to chime in, because I think this is what really differentiates this program. It's an inner transformation. We're learning a modality to be able to support and serve another by doing our own internal process first. And so it allows us to be able to connect and attune to another person on a much deeper level. And I believe that the training really allows us to awaken that sensorial ability, ability to really feel, even within another person, what might be occurring, beneath the surface. And this is something I find PTs, OTs, many professionals don't have this ability. So even if we look at professionals who work with children with special needs or children that are neurodiverse, they don't have the same capacity in that regard than I believe neuromovement practitioners do, is this ability to really tune into the child and meet them where they are and flow with them. So it's about flowing within the lesson. You often talk about not planning a lesson and just going with the child. And, we're not necessarily goal oriented. We're more so going with what's occurring in that moment. And, all of these beautiful things are lessons that teach us to tune into ourselves. They teach us presence. They teach us, inner expansion, which I feel is so profound for the parents, because it allows us to shift our perspective and to really start to see possibilities. Maybe you can speak to that, because I believe when you speak of the differentiation, those subtleties that we begin to feel within ourselves, it almost opens us up to starting to see these subtleties and all of these new opportunities outside of ourselves, because we're seeing them within. Perhaps you could speak about this.
Sure. Before I do that, and make sure to keep me on track in case I start going other places, but 2 things. I would replace goal, because, and I even have it as one of my essential flexible goals, because people put goals in a way that create enormous limitation and pain and heartbreak for both the child and the parent. But I'm very intentional. You see, so if I say, yes, I'm going to work with you and I'm going to work with your child, or I'm going to train you, like do a training program, is I have a I see possibilities. I mean, my whole work, it's possibilities based. I have a degree in statistics. I understand probability and how we increase the likelihood of certain things to happen and know that we can't control them directly. And the attempt to control it directly distorts the process in ways that are very, as I said, can be painful, harmful, or limiting. You know, so, but the intention, boy oh boy, if I didn't have the intention for you to graduate and be able to have a practice and to feel the way you feel and to thrive and your clients to thrive and to become a lifelong learner, by the way, then I'm not doing what I want to do. So intention is different from goal. But if you can only see two things, your world becomes very narrow, right? If you have only three things that you do every day, literally the world feels like it's shrinking. One would think, oh, if I have very little to do, I have room to expand. But mostly for people, depends what you do with the not doing, right? If you're like a big meditator and so on, then you're doing something very much, but it's not the usual external doing, right? But otherwise, people's lives become smaller, their health tends to go down, etc., etc. The whole process of growth and basically life, the building of it is through differentiation. So you get a sperm and an egg, and they meet each other, and they become one cell. They fuse. But immediately they begin differentiating. That means they go 2, and then that becomes 4, and then that becomes 16, and 8, and then 16, and so on and so forth. And grows into the millions, and then the billions, and then the trillions. And then, before it gets all the full size, what does it do? It's the same. And then at a certain point, and it's genetically, controlled and so on, it starts differentiating amongst itself, and it becomes 3 layers. Then those 3 layers, what do? One of them grows the skin and the brain and the other one does this, and the other one does that. Then within that, you start getting differentiation, right? You get the bones, and then you get the shapes, and you get the fingers, and then you get all this stuff is being built in the inner, and then there's a differentiation between different organs inside, and then the brain actually is different. The left side and the right side are different, which are very, very important in order to have awareness that it's not all the same. Anyway, so everything is differentiation, and then the biggest differentiation that happens, that is supposed to happen lifelong, is the differentiation in the brain. That means differentiation of function, differentiation of skills, differentiation of knowledge, creativity. All that stuff is built to keep propagating itself. And it can't propagate itself if it doesn't differentiate and creates the conditions for something new to occur. And that's basically the basis of life, vitality, and so on. And again, as this article I'm writing, I'm looking to do it in a way that, people will keep reading the article. It's a scientific article, so I don't know, they might get horrified in my style of writing, I don't know, but they need to read it, and if they read it, that's interesting for them, how to communicate that they would feel, that they would have the feeling of what I'm talking about. And that's a killer difficult. And I have no idea if I'm succeeding, but I'm doing the best I can. Because I can't talk about, oh, that felt miraculous to somebody who, sits in a lab and so on. Because it will be just, they're not differentiated enough to absorb it usually. But that is what it's about. And that's where our work lives. That's where the possibility comes, because we offer a process that wakes up, that turns on, that potentiates this process where between the movement and the sensation and the feelings and the ideas and your history and so on, you differentiate and you elaborate yourself to being a more of you. And that is, there's something I wanted to say, and that is the expansion, the inner expansion that manifests in external, by the way, greater freedom.
Yes.
Greater freedom. So when, I apologize for coughing. This is tough to say, but I'm going to say it. So, because your audience has a lot of parents with children with challenges. When we have a child, nothing is more important, right? I mean, unless something unusual is happening, that's it. The child is it. And it tends initially, it tends to narrow our world, right? And it's supposed to do that. We have to keep on schedule, wake up when they cry, give them, nurse them, blah, 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 school and the teachers. And it's kind of like this. And even this can be helped, and when a child has medical issues and challenges and this kind of stuff, the anxiety is enormous. The shock is enormous. It's trauma. And what does trauma tend to do to us? Way. Stop. I mean, it's like we have to survive, right? The whole survival stuff. And we do. And it's very challenging. And I've worked with parents of child with challenges that are MDs, that are PTs. They're no different from anybody else. When it comes to their child, they're not expert in that. They don't know. And it's even harder for them because they think they should. So it's important to recognize it. And the first thing to do is really get as much support as you can from people that are not increasing the anxiety and the terror of the situation. And then what you described to me before we got on is when you do this process, all of a sudden you get more freedom around the child, your response to the child, and then you get freedom and creativity and more actually skillfulness in handling and interacting with the child. And by the way, that greater skillfulness is also interacting with anybody else. Because this program is not for working with children with special needs. This program is learning how to work with other people or how to interact with other people to help create conditions for the other person to get home to themselves more and more and be well. So that is how I see it.
I love what you just said right now. And I feel this is exactly it, is that the program is really open to so many people. People who are psychologists could do this program. People who are medical practitioners could do this program. There's so much that occurs within us.
I had a woman, I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
I had a woman with a child with pretty severe, very severe cerebral palsy. And she was a housekeeper. And she somehow, one of the people she worked for was a wealthier person that paid for her to come and get sessions with us. She had to fly in. And her self-image was, we were about to open a training, and her self-image was that, well, she can do it. She's a housekeeper. And I said to her, and why can't you do it exactly? You know, what don't you know? You know, and I actually worked, interacted with her, and she signed to the training, and she did the training, and it changed everybody's life, her daughter's life, her sense of self, her everything. So when you say, I like it that you say, the doctors have been taking it. My dear friend Martha Herbert took it twice. We're working together on this article, so on and so forth. I mean, I'd love to have those people that are in positions to influence more centrally and bring about change. But pretty much anyone that can walk, talk, read, and write, can take it, because it's knowledge based on experience, and then you can gain data along the way.
Of course, and I completely agree. I think the angle I was going with the professionals is more because they become so much more tuned to themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Coming home to yourself, finding that freedom within. It's also very freeing in their practice, right? It also allows them to connect and attune to their clients.
It transforms. I mean, it's not the same practice.
Exactly.
It just changes. Even if they do some of the same routines, the way they do it's so different that it brings about completely different outcomes, of course. And one profession that at least I don't know how much people still do it, probably they do it to a great extent, is psychotherapists. Psychotherapists are expected to go into therapy in order to become therapists. So that is now, I think some people are doing almost equivalent to therapy outside of the umbrella, which maybe don't do that anymore, and psychiatrists don't do it. I mean, I know a psychiatrist that actually wrote a very important book about a bit of what we talk about, going with the system and all that stuff, was never in therapy. And let me tell you, it showed. so it varies, but I totally agree with your point. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's so valuable for everyone, and I think it's important to touch on all of this, but I'm going to take the conversation back to something you said before about the parents and the trauma that occurs, when they get a diagnosis for their child, and how that can be very difficult, and it can really shake one's world completely. And I found, and I think this is myself, and there are many other parents that have done your training, where, and I spoke of it a little bit at the beginning, it felt like the beginning of a deeper healing process, and this ability to heal and to come back to oneself, and to even heal our sense of self, to become more authentic, to find that vitality again. Because a lot of us, when we're parents, first of all, we lose ourselves. But then when we have a child that has a specific diagnosis, sometimes we identify with being a parent of a child with special needs. And so we completely lose our identity, who we are. We lose sense of that creativity, which is really what gives us that life force. And I talk a lot about being positive influences on our children and really modeling, being the example. And so going through our own process and finding that self-confidence, being authentic, practicing things that are creative, right? That allows us to really be free to be who we are, is so important to model for our children, especially when they're different, right? Because we want to celebrate them. We want to be able to see those things that are within them instead of being so focused on the limitations. So much of your training has really allowed me to expand and open up to all of this. And so I find there's so many topics we could talk about, just even in terms of parents and how much it transforms their entire relationship with their child, how much it transforms how they support them, how they see them, and it brings you the ability to be much more joyful on this path, which a lot of people find difficult. Do you want to speak a little bit about this?
Sure. I think an important part to say here that by doing this work, almost always the children get better. They don't necessarily go all the way, but within where they are, they develop, they evolve. The children, that's one of the things that from the very beginning when I started working with kids, parents said to me, my child is so much happier. And they're happier because they are getting more of what they need. Because a lot of what people do, I'm not talking about the immediate medical stuff and feeding and all that stuff, but what is done in attempts to help them is actually very burdensome and at times traumatizing them. So again, if they need a surgery, you do the surgery, right? I mean, and you do it in the best way you can, and to minimize, like you see, and I'll talk about a little bit my understanding of healing from trauma, from the point of view of, our work and the brain, basically, and the tissue, us, right? But I want to continue on that a little bit. So it's a skill. So you as a practitioner get a skill. That skill can be already taught, like in my course From Fixing to Connecting, where parents can learn how to adopt some of these basically principles or ways of being in the daily life, because it can be done in any action we take. We can do it in that way or that way or that way. So we're talking about learning to do it in a way that connects with the child and promotes differentiation, promotes learning. And really, when we really learn and really discover the new, it's exhilarating. So healthy children gets exhilarated a lot if they're not confined, because they discover, like, oh, you hear kids playing in the playground, they scream and shriek at the top of their voice because everything is amplified and everything's so exciting if they're doing well, right? But I discovered, because everything about this work, especially in relation to the children, I discovered. I mean, I studied with Feldenkrais, but then I discovered. Based, my baseline was very high because I trained with him. And what I discovered, that the experience of joy, exhilaration, and enhanced, immune system. A lot of the kids that came to me would come and they have a cold every 2.5 minutes. And then I work with them and they stop getting cold. And I thought, I wouldn't, it was so weird for me. It was so not related in my own understanding that I just chose not to think about it for quite a while. But I observed it. I saw that it was happening. I observed it actually in myself too. So with those children, within where they were, and sometimes very, very serious stuff. I remember with a child that also didn't have she had a short life expectancy. So the parents know she's not going to live she lived, once they start with those kids tend to live longer when we work with them, but we don't, necessarily reverse the life expectancy in general. Sometimes it's a year and a half longer. On a 1.5-year-old, that's a lot added. But she there was all that stuff, and one of the things was her head was turned to the left all the time. She just lay there. And I remember the very first session I worked with her, and she was able to turn the head to the middle. And her eyes could see in a different way. And she was so happy. She was so excited. It's only us that grow up and we see TV shows and we are on social media and we think, oh, their life is better. Why don't I have $1 billion? But the little ones, they can't do that. So they get to that feeling. The process of healing is being, if when necessary, is being aware of the past or being aware of what happened to you. So as a parent, it has happened to you and actually makes it harder to get over it because it keeps happening all the time. You know, you're with your child and you love your child, but you're also witnessing the initial devastation, the cause of the initial devastation, right? So the acknowledgement, the awareness, the knowing, I'm here. It's kind of like when you go to hike in a park and you want to know where to go, and there's a thing that says you're here, and then you can take this trail, that trail. That is very important. And that's one of the most important things I learned from having been trained to be a psychotherapist. It's like knowing, and sometimes it's in the past when you go to therapy, this did happen. It's important to know when we're ready to know. But as a parent, you know. And then the healing doesn't happen by going backwards. It happens by taking where you are and starting to create new possibilities. And that is the process. That's it. That's what I teach. The thing about the training, that it provides a very potent process to doing this and a very rich content-wise. So, and of course, the more complexity one has, the more possible things you can do with it. You know, that's my duck lecture when I try to explain to people exponential stuff, right? So I'm again writing this article, and when it's published, assuming I'm going to finish it on time, I am going to let you know where to find it, and you can let your audience know. But where was I going with that? Just one second. I don't remember. It'll come back.
That's okay. I actually loved when you spoke of the children and the joy and the happiness and how, suddenly they are healthier. And it makes a lot of sense to me, actually, because I believe that to create an optimal healing environment, a child has to feel optimistic. They have to begin to see themselves differently. And I feel that our work really helps them discover themselves.
Oh, 100%.
Right? Through a different lens, because the lens that is presented to these children.
It's not just discover themselves, it's to form themselves.
Yes.
We form ourselves. So we already have the arms and the hands and the fingers, but what are we going to do? And we don't even know it's me. It's part of me for quite a while. It all through experiences, there literally is mapping happening between the body and the brain, but it's not a two-dimensional map. It's not a flat map. It's many directions in many contexts, in many possible actions and movements and so on. And it's limitless. We could live 1,000 years and not in a healthy state and not exhaust all the possibilities. Now, we don't have to have that many possibilities, but we need to be in the process of growth, the process of both creating more possibilities, but also improving the quality by which we do that. And that's the hidden thing about my work that I think also some of the practitioners maybe not totally get. There's a lot of contents because we always work for contents. And of course, we become more and more prolific. So, we are, and it's very kind of gets our attention. But then there is the quality with which we operate, the quality with which our brain operates. And that is a huge, huge focus of this work. And as Michael Merzenich said once about this work, our work, he said, when you have a better, stronger brain, you can do and have a better life, right? We literally help the brain be a better, stronger brain, but not by telling you should do this or you should feel that. And what I said, and I realized, with all the training has so much content to it, so many different movement lessons, so many, theory, lectures, and the people get to know each other, and so much. It's very, very rich. But one day I said, I know what I'm doing. I'm helping people come home to themselves. But you come home to yourself by creating a better and grander home within yourself.
One that you didn't even know existed.
Because it didn't.
Right.
You see, when we get there, we say, oh, I'm home to myself. All these years, I didn't come home to myself. You didn't grow a home. It's you had, and being home is being in that process. You see, it's sort of like a little circular, but it's in the process that we experience home, and the process creates more and more, and that's the expansion you mentioned earlier. We are literally feeling bigger. I have a few people, but I have one friend that is objectively maybe 2 inches shorter. So I'm not very tall, and she's less tall. And she's just keeps saying to me, she said, Anat, I don't know why, but you always feel so tall to me. And I've had people, and I'm not a tall person once you see me objectively, but when it's something about, and I don't try, it's just how you feel. Oh my God, if I can locate it, and I think I know where it is, I'm going to show you a picture that I got. I was in the Children Mastery segment just now in North Carolina, and a little girl that I started working with her when she's very little, and she's so delicate and very bright, but had a lot of limitation in movement. And the first time she saw me, it was like one huge no. She didn't want me to touch her. She didn't want this, that. It was a big no. And there's a lot of personality in a tiny little frame. And I looked at her and I said, let's see let's see who wins. And of course, if I win, she wins, right? I work with her. And I haven't seen her for quite a while, and her mother is taking the training. She's in the training. And they had their practicum, so not the mother, but another student practiced on her. And she knew I was going to be there. Her excitement of, shy, I think maybe she's 4 now, or she's little. And then before they left, she gave me a gift, a picture. She drew a picture. And she drew a picture how she felt when she was little with me. And she draws herself this tiny, and she draws me like this big thing. That was, and it's beautiful because you see how much she connected to her feeling and to the body image and to the kinesthetic experience of stuff. Anyway, sorry for this disruption.
No, not at all. It's a presence, right? People feel someone's presence. It has nothing to do with how tall we are, or, right? It's the presence that we bring into the room.
Yes.
So, but I did want to speak about the children because, we talk a lot about movement in our work and understanding the relationships between the parts, and there's so much depth to it that we won't get into here, but there are so many changes that occur that are beyond physical movement. And I think that's important to mention because some people they almost limit themselves to, it's a practice in movement, so, it creates change in physical movement, but it creates so much change for the children, much beyond movement. Maybe you could speak to the changes that occur, with various conditions even.
Yeah. Well, the separation between mind and body is just, it's everywhere. And this article I'm working on is focused on the fact that movement and moving and sensing is what forms all aspects of ourselves. it feels by the time we become adults and we have acquired abstract thinking, we don't remember what it felt like when we were forming all this stuff. And then all the skills, the cognitive thinking, the interpersonal stuff, emotions, and so on and so forth. It feels like, oh, there's the movement, and I'm going to go to the gym. And people realize I go to the gym and I feel happier, but they're told, oh, because your brain produces more endorphins, or which it may very well be, but it does. And it's not just that there is a relationship between A and B. It's one system. It has many, many parts to it, way more than just cognitive or mind and body. I mean, it's huge. But functionally, from life points of view, it is one system that generates all that we know about ourselves. The mind, the body, the emotions, the feelings, the beliefs, the this, the that. And movement is the primary activity and concern of the brain. You take movement away, you took life away, right? And this is the brain's first concern or engagement or its thing, That's why I coined the phrase, movement is the language of the brain. But it's not, movement always comes with sensing, with sensation. And the sensory cortex and the motor cortex are next to each other in the brain. And a third of the motor cortex is sensory cells, because it can't be otherwise, because it has to operate and inform each other all the time. So if we want people to get better, however we want to, movement is actually the best thing to begin with and continue with. But I'm not talking about movement like exercise or movement, and exercise is great. I mean, I like to move and I hike and stuff, but I get just way too bored to exercise. So it's not good. I'm told I should weight lift and things. We'll see, maybe one day. But it's not against doing, movement, but it's how you do it. And that's what the training is all about. Utilizing this immediate access and opportunity to connection with the person, irrespective of almost anything, if you really, the sensing and moving. I've been told so many times by parents, I can't believe your child lets you do this. They will never let me do this. However I do with them. And because of the way I've been interacting with them, it's almost like I'm sort of lending myself to them. And through that, they can launch themselves into the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And in that sense, there's just no separation. Now, if we take it a little further, thinking is movement. It's a form of movement, real thinking. You start here, stuff happens, movement in your brain, movement in your muscles, movement everywhere, in your eyes and so on. And then you have an idea. You have a thought. You solve the math problem. I remember I told the Merzenich, the famed neuroscientist, that they were doing, he has this for how does it call it, some brain program thing. And I said, if you get people to do, I said to him, my 7 minutes of my work, or even 5 minutes of movement, then do your interactive on, visual and auditory and all that stuff on the computer, and then do it without. You see, the people who did a little bit of movement before, the way we do it, will get much better outcomes. They didn't even take my kind of movement. They just took a little bit of movement, and he kind of understood what I was doing, and it proved to be true. When I work with the children, when they have a hard time reading or writing, and of course I've already been working with them, the very first 5 to 10 minutes of the lesson are movement, that I move them or that, and then to upgrade the brain, to get it to a position where it has the potency to understand the more complex stuff, math or whatever, or perceive lines, to be able to put the letters inside. And so for me, it's just so there. Yeah.
Yes, and it awakens the brain in so many different ways. Even I've noticed, and perhaps you could speak to this, children on the spectrum. Oftentimes when we start to work with them, they come home to themselves, as you say, but it's almost like they had no idea who that was, and they start to discover who they are. And so the changes are so different than the changes we're going to see in a child that has CP, for example. I mean, there are similar changes, but visibly you're going to see, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can read to you what I wrote this morning before I got on to you in the. I just wrote it. Here we go. So it's the summary of. I described in incredible detail a total of 2.5 minutes of a beginning of the first session of a child on the autism spectrum, 21 months old, and I say everything I saw and everything I did. So 2.5 minutes did it. And or 3 minutes, however long it was. During the session, as wise, involuntary, repetitive arching, he did a very violent arching movement backwards, dissipated and disappeared. His movements became progressively more fluid and harmonious, while concurrently, he spontaneously began noticing more and paying attention with growing duration. His eye contact and directed gaze at what was happening with him and around him spontaneously appeared in conjunction with the motor progression. In tandem with all of the above, why emerged relational? He started, he didn't have any eye contact. He did this repetitive, involuntary, violent, movement, and he never related to anyone, not to even his twin brother. And within 15 minutes, basically, he was quiet. This arching never happened again. Looked me straight in the eye. Even, when I did something with him that got him to giggle. And then I said, again, and he got what I meant. And he said, So he had totally nonverbal. I got him to, that's verbal, right? 15 minutes. Now, did it need more work? Of course, because a tendency for the regression, and there's so much more to do. But I just called, now they live in Israel, and I called, and he's been fully integrated into school without an aid or anything. He's 6 years old. He kept getting not a whole lot of lessons, but batches, the way, we tend to do it. And then they moved and they worked with, I gave him probably a total of 2 lessons his whole life. Everything else was done with other teachers. And he's a teenager in school with his brother, and a friend of mine saw him a year ago. So she said she wouldn't have ever, now not all kids get that way. They don't all respond the same trajectory at the same speed, but let me tell you, all respond. because we're built to be related to this way. That's why they let me do it. Because, first of all, they feel safe, completely safe. And that's how we are structured to be related to how things need to come to us for us. That's how we are built. So when we get the vitamins we need, we absorb them and our skin looks better. And a lot of what humanity has evolved over the millennia is not up to date. We need to update it. And parents and children can benefit from it tremendously. And for people who may be taking a training is too much for them to even think about at this point, they can come to you for lessons. They can take the Fixing to Connecting course when we offer it again. They can, we do little 3-hour workshops now. We offer them for $35, not Canadian, American, but it's still not that much. And start experiencing it. You can get materials, from the website, movement lessons. Read the book, Kids Beyond Limits. Do you have a copy? Can you show a copy of the book?
Yes. Oh, I don't have it here, unfortunately. Yeah. Not in this room, but I can put a picture up.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, because there's just start somewhere, because just like with this little boy, that I'm describing, you start somewhere and the change starts, and then it continues as you continue with the process.
Well, thank you so much. I think this speaks to how much can occur with this work. And I think it's a wonderful way to close today. And I'll just offer you, space to say any last words before we close our conversation.
Oh, well, first of all, I had a wonderful time being in conversation with you. I find you to be delightful. And I'm so happy that you're doing so well with the work and want to bring it to the attention of more people. And I want to say to the parents that there is just so much that can get to be better, even if certain things are not possible to happen for your child. And some things that are considered impossible become possible, or at least partially possible, and sometimes perhaps not at all, but other things open up. And it's okay for you to pay attention to yourself, to invest in yourself, and and you've heard that a million times, but the better you do, the better it is for your child, because your child absorbs everything.
As we conclude this deeply insightful episode with Anat Baniel, I hope you have gained a profound understanding of the transformative power of the Anat Baniel Method NeuroMovement. Anat's work teaches us the importance of subtle movement and attention in awakening our brains and expanding our perceptions and understanding. This journey of self-discovery and healing not only empowers us as individuals, but also enhances our ability to connect and attune to others, especially our children and those we serve. Anat's insights remind us that true healing and connection begins with ourselves. By taking the time to be present to our own bodies and sensorial awareness, we unlock new levels of expansion and vitality. This is what enables us to support those we care for in even more meaningful ways. Thank you for joining us on Evolving Together. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with others who might benefit from Anat's wisdom. And we've included some helpful links for you to access the amazing power of this work. And there's a surprise gift in there. Remember to subscribe to our podcast for more inspiring conversations and practical insights. Until next time, stay connected, stay present, and continue your journey of conscious practice. You've been listening to Evolving Together with Christine Labbé, beyond the diagnosis into a new realm of possibilities.
Tune in every second Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time or 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Transformation Talk Radio for more insights, understanding, and expansion that empower you to support your child in a way that is aligned with their soul's potential. Your child deserves to be seen, heard, valued, and celebrated exactly as they are. Are you ready to be the change you want to see for your neurodiverse child? Take the first step towards a new future and visit www.christinelabe.com or check out our collective site, www.evolvemovement.ca.